It is now my distinct honor to introduce today's graduation speaker. Permit me first to stipulate that our class officers are unquestionably a far-sighted group, as you've seen. But when they recommended back in October that we invite Lilly Ledbetter to speak at graduation, I don't think even they knew how prescient the choice would be. As we enter the midterm election cycle, the issue of equal pay for women figures prominently in our political conversation. And no one, let me repeat, no one has played a more central role in that debate than Lilly Ledbetter. She truly requires no introduction, but I won't let that stop me. Ledbetter is the woman at the center of the historic discrimination case that inspired the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Restoration Act, the first piece of legislation, the very first piece of legislation President Obama signed into law when he took office in 2009. And I'll note that just last month, Ledbetter was back at the White House, again at the president's side, when he signed 2 executive orders aimed at increasing wage transparency, an issue very much at the heart of her lawsuit. Ledbetter's story epitomizes passion for justice and the power of a determined plaintiffs and lawyers alike to effect positive change through our system of laws. The outlines of her story are well known. She worked at a Goodyear tire and rubber plant in Alabama for 19 years until 1998. Near the end of that time, she received an anonymous note telling her that she was being paid substantially less than other supervisors with the same job because she was a woman. Ledbetter filed a sex discrimination case against Goodyear in 2003. She was awarded back pay of $328,000 and more than $3 million in punitive damages. But the decision was reversed on appeal. She pressed her case all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. In 2007, the court, in a 5-4 decision, denied her claim, ruling that she had not filed her complaint within 180 days of the first unequal pay check back in the 1980s, even though she was unaware of the inequity at the time. In a stinging dissent, Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg urged Ledbetter not to give up. Perhaps that advice was unnecessary. As a journalist for Forbes magazine once put it, nothing will stop her. Ledbetter did not set out to be an activist for women's equality. She did not even involve herself in politics much until the Supreme Court ruled against her. But when it did, she decided it was time to start. She began an intensive lobbying campaign, visiting with individual members of Congress to explain why a law ensuring equal pay for the same job benefits must apply to both men and women. Barack and Michelle Obama took up her cause on the campaign trail in 2008, which led to the enactment of the namesake legislation that loosened the timeliness requirements for filing a discrimination lawsuit and overturned the Supreme Court's ruling in her case. In the years since, Ledbetter has published her memoir, the aptly titled Grace and Grit, My Fight for Equal Pay and Fairness at Goodyear and Beyond. She continues to travel the country advocating for the civil rights of women and minorities and driving home the message that unequal pay creates a lifetime of second-class citizenship. The legal academy and the profession have certainly made great strides. When I sat where you were sitting and graduated from law school in 1979, there were no women on the Supreme Court. Today there are 3. But a time when equity partners in large law firms are still disproportionately men, and women lawyers earn about 82% of what their male counterparts make, there is clearly more work to be done. It will take determination to do it, but Lilly Ledbetter epitomizes the difference one person can make. Please join me in welcoming the 2014 commencement speaker, a woman who has become an American icon and a symbol for positive legal change, Lilly Ledbetter.
Good afternoon, Dean Fitz, faculty and staff, members of the graduating class of 2014, families and friends, what indeed an honor it is for me to be here. Yes, I brought my Southern accent. As the media likes to refer to it, it's the Southern drawl. But I do have a good story, and the problem about my story is not just for me. It touches each one of you in some way or other. And I can't tell you what indeed honor this is for me, to be here with you today. Graduates, I know your friends and families and everyone who's been with you on this long journey are so proud of you. And I hope you're proud of yourselves as well. Graduating law school is no small achievement, and I'm thrilled to be a part of your celebration of your hard work. I'm especially happy to be here because your class selected me. My own journey has introduced me to many new places and faces, but I think this is the first election I've ever won. Thank you for that. Graduation days hold so much promise, and I'm told that a graduation speaker is to inspire and fill you with hope and anticipation about the bright, shiny future in front of you. Oprah Winfrey once said, "Luck is a matter of preparation, meeting opportunity." I have no doubt that you're prepared following your rigorous legal studies. As for opportunity, if my journey has taught me anything, it's that many opportunities will be in store for you. Some opportunities will land in your lap, and others you'll create for yourself. You'll miss some opportunities too, but that's just a part of life. Don't dwell on them, just learn from them. You'll take some opportunities that won't look so good in hindsight, and others that will fundamentally alter the course of your life. For me, those life-altering opportunities are where luck came in. Sometimes a bright future doesn't always go as planned. This certainly wasn't what I had planned for my life. There can be tough times and dark moments. I've certainly had my share, and one of my most difficult challenges was played out on the national stage, taking me all the way to the Supreme Court and landing me in a front row seat at the White House. Of course, I'm talking about my discovery after almost 2 decades of working for Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company, finding out that my male colleagues that had the exact same job, same title as I did, we did the same exact work, just a different shift, but they were making 40% less than I was, that I was making 40% less than the men. This is not right. It's not the law. It was unjust. And I just could not let a major corporation get by with treating me and my family that way. I'm not sure how I did it after discovering that note, but I went on to work my shift that day, burning on the inside with both devastation and humiliation. This was a very personal injustice for me, especially after all the years of watching my family do without. After discussing this with my husband, he and I drove to Birmingham, Alabama, and I filed a charge with the Equal Employment Commission in March of 1998 about how Goodyear had systematically underpaid me for all those years. A few months later, in November 1999, I was issued the right to sue letter, and the EEOC investigator advised me that their caseload was enormous and they were extremely far behind and very short-staffed, that I might want to find my own attorney to get to trial quicker. Luckily, I heard about a young attorney named John Goldfarb in Birmingham, Alabama, with a large firm, who took my case on a contingency basis, which meant that his firm and I would have shared 50-50 whatever I received at the end of the trial or in a settlement. But to his dismay, there was never any settlement or any award from either court that we could carry home. Sometimes I wonder if John would have agreed to take my case if he knew just what the process would entail. I've done the math on it. So picture this. By the end of the trial, if all the documents were vertically stacked, they would create a 50-foot tower. That's a 3-story building. To make it more challenging, all of this involved 20th century technology. You all may not have much need for it now, but everything for my trial was faxed, mailed, or hand-delivered. Sometimes it makes me feel like I should apologize to a tree for all the paper involved in my case. We filed the lawsuit in November in 1999, but the actual trial didn't start until January of 2003. These cases are very difficult to get before a jury trial. After a week of testimony, the jury came back on Friday afternoon with a verdict, a nice verdict, $3.8 million. The lawyers had advised me to not make any outward emotions. Don't do a yes or cry or beat on the desk, just stare at the wall. It was awfully hard when I heard we find in a plaintiff's favor $3.8 million. It wasn't about the money for me, but it was about what was right. Actually, I had already depleted all of my 401k account to make ends meet. I decided I would rather be financially devastated than live the rest of my life feeling victimized and allowing this type of discrimination to go on unchallenged. I simply couldn't accept how they treated me without a fight. When I started my lawsuit, I could not even begin to comprehend the depth and breadth of what it would involve and how hard it would be, even under the best of circumstances, to prove my case. And these cases are extremely hard on the individual, and it's extremely difficult on their families. I tell people today you need 3 things to see a case like this from beginning to the end. You've got to be a very strong individual, you need a family to support you, and you better have a higher power that you can rely on, because everybody does not agree with what you're stepping out and stepping up for. Goodyear stalled the case at every turn, refusing to deliver the documents we requested. They even claim to have lost my employment records. It got so ridiculous that in the fall of 2000, a year after we filed our case, John was forced to file a motion to compel, asking the court to order Goodyear to produce what we'd asked for, including the rates of pay of my male co-workers. I'd seen some of their pay information on that handwritten note shoved into my mail, but seeing that information on an official letterhead to see how cheaply I was being paid compared to my colleagues doing the same job made me think I must have been the joke at Goodyear's Human Resources Department. It was clear that Goodyear didn't play fair, that they never played fair with me, and that they never would. This, along with my painful memories, fired me up even more during the long trial preparation phase. Our trial date was set for January 21st, 2003. My lawyer's task was to prove that my claims were true. His challenge was to wade through the documents, depositions, and circumstantial evidence to prove discrimination. In essence, he had to answer the question, why was I, the only woman in a vast majority and hundreds of male employees, making so much less? The trial only lasted for 3 days, but they felt like weeks, testifying about decades of discrimination and ill treatment, being made to feel ungrateful or crazy just because what I wanted I had rightfully earned. It was one of the most challenging times of my life. Goodyear had given me many performance awards over the years, but now they said I was a poor performer who worked there for 20 years. When the jury came back, they found in my favor. but that Goodyear had paid me less because of my sex. They awarded me back pay and damages for my mental anguish and desperate salary claim. But the real kicker was the punitive damages. The jury was so incensed by Goodyear's actions that they awarded me over $3 million in punitive damages. Goodyear appealed, of course. And so did life, and so did my case. We went on together because I still couldn't let it go. In the fall of 2005, the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, one of the most conservative courts in the country, reversed the jury verdict. They noted my case was filed too late, even though I continued to receive discriminatory pay throughout my career, because the original decision to discriminate against me had been made years earlier in the 80s. I was speechless. It wasn't that I'd lost the money. It was the fact that Goodyear was exonerated for its wrongdoing because it had been discriminating against me long enough to make it legal. It was a ridiculous decision and a dangerous one. With this decision, the 11th Circuit reversed the standards that the EEOC and 9 of the 10 courts of appeal had applied to pay discrimination cases under Title VII. The ruling said you couldn't count each discriminatory paycheck as a new act of discrimination. Instead, victims of discrimination were supposed to file charges within 180 days of the original discriminatory action. Once 180 days had passed, employers are exempt from accountability, no matter what they do next. Somehow they thought I should have known or found out about the pay discrimination, even though Goodyear's policies were they forbid us from discussing our pay, and they never posted when the pay rates increased due to the cost of living. You never knew exactly where you stood. I thought this was the end of the road, but I was wrong. My lawyers filed a cert petition with the Supreme Court to have them take up the case. It was a long shot, but the High Court took the case, and we had our case heard in November of 2006 before the Supreme Court. Now, life goes on. You have birthdays, you have holidays, and you have different hardships in your family. My husband had developed cancers, and 2 weeks prior to going to the Supreme Court, he had had the left side of his face removed and skin grafted off his right leg. And the doctors had told us he had the worst possible cancer in the worst possible location. When I got back from going to the Supreme Court and he healed enough, we were facing radiation and chemo treatments. My daughter traveled with me to Washington, and we sat in the courtroom together to hear my case. After all the preparation and the journey and the powerful depositions and records we had, that case only lasted an hour. But 6 months after the hearing, in May of 2007, I heard the court's judgment. My lawyer called and he said they've ruled against us. He said, "Don't worry about the media, we'll handle it." It was bitter, but I accepted it. I had fought the good fight, but I had lost. And I wasn't expecting the phone calls to come in like they did, but the first one I got was NBC Nightly News wanting to interview me for that evening's program. I wasn't expecting all the others, but the next one was Norman Lear, and you young people will have to ask your parents who he is. He sent a crew into my home in Alabama. We made video after video that ran on YouTube. And then CNN called, and the New York Times, and the Chicago papers, and LA, and San Francisco, all over the country was calling. The outcry about this ruling in this case was so responsive until it set this country on edge. They all wanted to talk to me about my case and about Justice Ginsburg's dissent. I didn't know it at the time, but when the court had announced its decision, Justice Ginsburg read her dissent, every word loud and clear. Her voice that dissent from the bench. Her words, she said, "This doesn't make sense in the real world." She said this majority doesn't know what they're speaking about because people don't stand around water coolers discussing their pay. And even if you knew someone was making a little less than you, it might not be based on discrimination. She urged Congress to fix the problems. She said the ball is in your court. When that ball went to Congress, Lilly Ledbetter went with it. She was completely right, but the court's decision that discrimination can become legal if it goes on long enough had become the law. It was wrong, it was unjust, but it was now the law. The arrogance and wrongheadedness of that decision stuns people whenever I tell them about it. I won't lie, I was pretty devastated by the court's decision, and my devastation extended far beyond my own situation. The ruling had severely limited the rights of victims of pay discrimination to vindicate their rights under Title VII. Not only women, but also everyone who is supposed to be protected against pay discrimination based on race, color, religion, or national origin. In one fell swoop, I lost my case, and I became the poster child of unequal pay for equal work. I can't stop talking about it because this covers so many millions of workers across this country. And when that verdict was released, it was no longer about Lilly Ledbetter because my case was over. The High Court of the land had ruled, and I would not get any money, and I've never got a penny from my case. But I couldn't let my name be associated with something so devastating to the American families. I wanted my name to be associated with something that would help the American families. I spent the next 2 years after the court's ruling walking the halls of Congress, testifying twice before the House, twice before the Senate, and I had the great honor then to go back and testify on behalf of Elena Kagan's confirmation hearings. I also had on my bucket list, I had to meet Justice Ginsburg because she's been my inspiration and my hero always. I got to meet her in November of 2010. I get correspondence from Justice Ginsburg about every 2 months. My attorney back home said I shouldn't worry about what I get in the mail from her. I should just frame the envelopes, that they've never known anyone to get correspondence from a Supreme Court justice. But through the work of people across the country, we got such a bill. The Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act was the first bill signed into law by President Barack Obama. That was one of the greatest moments of my life, to stand in that room that day behind the president when he signed that into law, because I knew that signature meant so much to so many of the American families. And I stood there that day without my husband being at home and supporting me, because he passed away in December of '08 with that cancer. But he supported me right up until his death, and he knew that that would eventually pass. Speaking of things you didn't know and of opportunities that land in your lap, I certainly didn't know that I had a whole other career in front of me after the lawsuit, but that's exactly what happened. For the last several years, I've traveled the world talking about fair pay. I've been as far as Rome, Italy. The Italian ministries invited me and the Washington attorney to come to Italy and share my story, because I first thought this was just a deep South problem because I had never lived anywhere else. But I soon learned this is north to south, east to west, and around the world. The French sent a reporter into Washington to talk with me, and Japan sent one into Vermont a few years back. And also the book that's just been published, The Grace and Grit. The grace is part of the title is because of my ballroom dancing days. I was an accomplished ballroom dance competitor for 8 years, and that's another speech. The movie script is already written. There will be a movie. They're working on who will play me and of course, the money. Maybe I can get this class to raise some money for me. But the book has just been translated in Japanese. There was 2 lawyers came to Alabama a year ago last summer, and they translated the book into Japanese, and it was just released February of this year, and they're telling all of their law students in Japan they must have their own copy of the book. So they're studying it there as well. But these stories have touched so many people's lives, and it means so much, and there's so much more work left to be done for all of you law students. And I'm looking to people like you to lend me a hand to get some of this work accomplished. The disparity tells us that the gender pay gap, it's not a myth, it's the math. It's truly there. A year out of college, even when you control for factors that affect pay, women with the same major in the same occupation are already earning less. And 10 years out, the gap becomes even larger, even though women are more likely to earn a graduate degree. This is not acceptable for our daughters or for our sons. You're all here because you believe in the law and it can be good. I'll tell you honestly, the law can do great things, but it also can do harm. The law was used against me and my family, and the law won't ever make it right again. I ask you, actually I urge you to use your education and commitment to the law to serve others. Use the opportunities coming your way to do good. And don't be afraid to let those opportunities change the course of your life forever. If I had been too afraid, I wouldn't be here today with all of you celebrating your great accomplishment. We all have a voice inside of us about what's right, what's wrong, and that keeps us going during the dark times. So listen to your voice and follow it, because most of the time it will have you on the right path. It's your job, so use it to do good. You don't have to have a law named after you to have your name associated with justice in the world. Justice isn't something that's found, it's something that's fought for. And the battle comes in all shapes and sizes, and I'm telling you, the fight is worth it. Again, thank you so much for selecting me to be your commencement speaker. I've tremendously enjoyed being here, and I can't wait to see all the good this class of 2014 will accomplish with your new degrees and with opportunities that come your way. Remember who you are and stay true to your beliefs and goals. Congratulations on your graduation, class of 2014. I do have to share a little bit of personal note to you about lawyers. I believe in you folks now. I even have a law student who works on my computer program and programs my computer programs and keeps me straight. My lawyer who represented me for 9 years from Birmingham, John Goldfarb, he negotiated the book deal. He never got a penny. His law firm actually has $500,000 in my case in billable hours and dollars spent. They never got a penny. He also found me a writer. He didn't get anything out of that. An agent contacted him from New York wanting the book deal, and he signed her up and negotiated a contract, never got a dime. When the movie script writer came along, he got me a lawyer in California, never got anything out of that. So I'm hoping someday I will be able to pay him, and he's still the best friend I've got. He says he'll never get that close to another client, but we were together so many years, we feel like family. In fact, I have to share one last bit with you. When he called me that we were going to Washington to start work on the Ledbetter bill, he said, "Lilly, we're going to Washington." And I did because I had no money to buy a plane ticket. My husband was going to cancer treatment 6 days a week, and we were middle-class America. We didn't have the money. He said, "Don't worry about it, I have you a plane ticket," and he told me what time to be at the airport. I don't know if he bought the ticket or who he got to buy it. But that was a great honor, and he went to Washington and stayed right with me until we got that first hearing out of the way. And he's been with me every step of the way, so never underestimate yourself as a lawyer as you go forward. Thank you, class of 2014.
What an inspiring story and speech. She really does epitomize, I think, and embody that principle that one person alone, can really make a difference, and gives meaning to why it is we all went to law school and what the great hope of the legal profession is. So again, I want to thank Lilly Ledbetter for a wonderful graduation.